Something unseen is watching.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Scary Dark Narrations. Tonight we dive deep into the darkest corners of North America, where reality and nightmare blur into one. Hidden beyond the comfort of civilization lie ancient forests, desolate highways, and moonlit lakes that have witnessed things no human was meant to see. In this episode, I bring you 7 of the most disturbing true cryptid encounter stories ever recorded. Each of these chilling tales comes from people who claim to have seen creatures that shouldn't. Exist beings that move through our world unseen, leaving behind only footprints, fear, and silence. These aren't campfire myths or bedtime legends. They are real encounters from hikers, hunters, and travelers who face something primal, something ancient, lurking just beyond the edge of their flashlight beam. From the dense wilderness of the Pacific Northwest, to the forgotten backroads of the South, to the mist-drenched valleys where locals refuse to go after dark, these stories will make you question what truly roams the shadows when the sun goes down. For the privacy and safety of those who survive to tell their tale, some names and details have been changed. But the horror at their core remains untouched. So settle in, turn off the lights, and remember, not every monster hides under your bed. Some are still out there, watching. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to Scary Dark Narrations for nightly doses of true horror stories that will haunt your dreams and make you think twice before stepping into the dark. Hit that notification bell so you never miss when the unseen calls your name. The first thing I noticed that morning was how alive the forest felt. The crisp air clung to my skin like static, and the scent of pine and wet earth filled my lungs. I'd always felt safe out there. Washington's wild edges were home to me. My name's Gabriel, and the woods had always been where I went to clear my head. But that illusion of safety shattered 3 years ago, on a trail that doesn't appear on most maps. I can still hear the silence that day, a silence so deep it felt like the earth itself was holding its breath. It started as any other hike. My old pickup creaked to a stop at a forgotten trailhead 2 hours north of Seattle. No cars, no footprints in the mud, just the whisper of wind through endless rows of pine. I remember locking my truck, slinging my backpack over my shoulder, and inhaling that cool mountain air like it was freedom. I told myself it would be a quick 6-hour loop, an easy day. No camping, no need for company. I'd hiked alone hundreds of times before, but that morning, something about the forest felt too still, as if it had been waiting for me. For the first few miles, everything looked normal. Birds chattered overhead, a stream murmured somewhere off to my right, and shafts of sunlight painted golden veins across the dirt path. It was peaceful, hypnotic almost. Stopped once to take photos, the kind of pictures you send to prove you've escaped civilization. That was before everything changed. About 4 miles in, the forest went dead. No birds, no insects. Even the wind seemed to vanish. The silence hit me so hard it rang in my ears. I stopped walking and listened. Nothing but the faint thud of my heartbeat and the crunch of gravel under my boots. I'd spent years outdoors, and I knew what silence meant. Either a predator was nearby, or something unnatural was happening. I looked up. The sky was clear. No storm coming. My gut told me to turn back. I didn't. I walked another few steps and saw the tracks. Deep impressions in the mud, where the trail dipped near a small overflow stream. At first I thought they were human, barefoot prints, large ones. But then I crouched down and froze. The stride was far too long, at least 6 feet between steps. The toes were elongated and almost claw-like. The heel marks sank deep, heavier than any person could make, and they were fresh. A chill rippled through me. Maybe a bear walking upright, I told myself, or a trick of the mud. But my instincts screamed otherwise. I pulled out my phone, tried to take a picture. No signal, no GPS, nothing. Just that tiny icon mocking me in the top corner of the screen. When I stood, I noticed how wrong the air felt. It was heavy now, pressing against me, dense and electric. My ears caught the faintest rhythm. Something breathing, low, raspy, wet. It came from the trees to my left. I turned, but there was nothing. Just rows of trunks fading into mist. I called out, "Hello? Anyone out there?" My voice came back hollow, distorted, swallowed by the forest. The breathing didn't stop. It matched my movements. When I walked, it followed. When I stopped, it went silent. A shiver crawled up my spine. I picked up my pace, boots thudding faster on the dirt. Whatever it was tracking me, not close enough to see, but close enough to know it wanted me to feel it. The breathing moved parallel, just inside the tree line. Every few seconds, something pale flickered in my peripheral vision, gone before I could turn my head. My heartbeat sounded louder than my footsteps. Then came the footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, crushing through the undergrowth behind me. I spun around so fast my backpack swung forward, nearly toppling me. Nothing, just still trees, endless and silent. I forced a laugh under my breath, but it sounded foreign, fragile. "Get it together, Gabe," I whispered. That's when I saw it. About 30 yards down the trail, something stood in the open, tall, impossibly tall, maybe 7 feet or more. Its body was thin, skin stretched over bone, pale as moonlight. Arms too long, joints bent wrong, like a marionette dangling from invisible strings. It had no face, no eyes, no mouth, nothing. Just smooth skin pulled tight across where a face should have been. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. It tilted its head, slow and mechanical, like a machine trying to mimic curiosity. That motion broke something in me. I turned and ran. Branches whipped at my face as I tore through the forest. The sound behind me, not footsteps now, but something gliding, followed easily. It didn't stumble, didn't slow. I left the trail, crashing through brush, desperate to lose it. My lungs burned, and still I ran, until I hit a root and went sprawling, face first into the dirt. When I looked up, it was standing over me. Its skin shimmered faintly, veins pulsing like black threads beneath the surface. Long skeletal fingers ended in nails darker than ink. The air hummed, a deep vibration in my skull. Then it made a sound, a clicking noise, wet and deliberate, like something inside its chest was trying to speak. Then, silence swallowed everything. When sound returned, it wasn't my own breathing, it was its. That rasping exhale filled the space between us, hot and shallow, as if it were trying to mimic what life sounded like. I pushed myself backward, dirt grinding into my palms. My knife, where was it? My hands fumbled at my belt until I felt the handle and yanked it free, holding it between us. "Stay back," I shouted, though it made no sense. How do you threaten something that isn't human? It didn't move. Just stood there, head tilted, its body vibrating slightly like it existed halfway between this world and another. The clicking grew louder, faster, and then it lunged. I don't remember standing. I only remember the blur of movement, the trees tearing past me, my breath tearing through my throat. Every few seconds I'd hear it again, not chasing on the trail, but beside it, keeping pace without effort. Could feel it there, feel its focus, like it wasn't chasing to catch me. It was studying me. I burst into a clearing, moonlight spilling across the moss-covered ground. For a moment, I thought I'd lost it. The forest was still, my chest heaved. I wiped sweat and dirt from my eyes, forcing my breathing to slow, then snap. A branch cracked behind me. I didn't turn. I ran. Again. The forest blurred into streaks of green and black. My body ached, muscles screaming for rest, but the adrenaline wouldn't let me stop. Every time I thought I'd gained distance, that rasping breath returned, too close, inside my head. I wanted to scream, but I was afraid that would make it real. Finally, through the trees, I saw it, a dirt fire road, cutting like a lifeline through the wilderness. I stumbled onto it, almost falling to my knees. The open space gave me hope. I glanced back. Nothing, just darkness. The tree line loomed, silent as before. I waited, eyes locked on the black mouth of the forest, expecting that pale shape to step out. But it didn't. For a long, agonizing minute, the woods stayed still. Maybe it was gone. Maybe it couldn't leave the trees. I didn't dare test it. I walked, then jogged, then ran again until the silhouette of my truck appeared between the pines. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my keys twice before getting the door open. I locked it immediately, sat there panting, eyes darting between the dashboard and the forest beyond. And then, movement. Just for a moment. Something shifted behind the tree line, tall and slow. I blinked, and it was gone. The drive home felt endless. Every curve of the mountain road looked wrong, too dark, too empty. When I finally reached civilization, I didn't feel relief. I felt watched. For weeks, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd hear that wet clicking sound echoing in my skull. I tried telling myself it was a hallucination, maybe exhaustion, maybe oxygen deprivation. But deep down, I knew. Whatever that thing was, it had been real. A month later, I went to speak with a park ranger. I told him everything, the tracks, the silence, the faceless figure. He nodded politely but never wrote a thing down. He said I'd probably seen a bear or a trick of the light. But when I mentioned the clicking sound, his expression changed. Just for a second. He glanced toward the window, toward the forest. Then quietly he said, "You should stay out of those woods. Some things in there don't belong." That night I packed away my camping gear. I haven't gone hiking alone since. Still, sometimes when I drive past those dense northern woods, I feel it again, that static pressure, that unnatural stillness. Once, I thought I saw something pale between the trees, keeping pace with my car as I drove. I blinked. It was gone. But the silence that followed felt too familiar. It's too intentional. If you ever find yourself hiking and the forest suddenly goes quiet, trust your gut. Don't look back. Don't wait. Just run. Because some silences mean you're being watched, and some watchers never stop. Would you dare return to that forest? The first thing I remember about that trip was the quiet. The kind of silence that feels alive, where every breath of wind seems to listen back. The air smelled like pine and cold water, sharp and clean. My friends and I had been planning that camping trip for months, desperate to escape cell signals, deadlines, and noise. Just 3 days at a lake so remote it didn't show up on most maps. Northern Minnesota, nothing but forest, sky, and the sound of your own thoughts. The drive took forever. Dirt roads rattled the car, tires crunching over gravel and roots. Jenna sat next to me, head against the window, watching trees blur into green streaks. When the road finally opened onto the lake, it felt unreal, a mirror of sky, so still that clouds hung perfectly reflected in the water. There were no other cars, no docks, not even tire tracks. It felt like stepping out of the world. We set up camp along the eastern shore where an old fire ring sat half buried in leaves. Addison gathered sticks, while Marcus pitched the tents with his usual precision. By sunset, we had a fire roaring, and the lake was glowing orange. I remember thinking this place feels untouched. When night came, we swam under the stars, laughing so loud that the echoes seemed to chase us across the water. The next morning, everything felt dreamlike. The lake was misted over, calm as glass. We fished, cooked breakfast, and spent the afternoon drifting in kayaks. The forest wrapped around us like a wall, endless green broken only by the whisper of wind. It was perfect until the sun started to fall. That's when I noticed something strange. While paddling near the center of the lake, the air grew colder. The water beneath my kayak darkened, thick like ink. For a second I thought I saw something move down there, a flicker of shadow twisting far below. I told myself it was a fish, maybe a log caught in the current. But the lake had no current. When I glanced up, the others were already heading back toward camp. That night, the fire burned low. We told stories, ghost tales, of course, laughing between bites of toasted marshmallows. The stars were so bright they looked close enough to touch. Then Addison stopped mid-sentence, her face turned toward the water. "Did you see that?" She whispered. We followed her gaze. The lake was flat, black glass under the moon. But something big broke the surface about 50 yards out. A ripple moved straight toward us, cutting the water in a perfect line. Marcus chuckled nervously. Probably a fish. But the ripple didn't spread, kept moving like something swimming directly at us. Jenna grabbed her flashlight and aimed it at the water. The beam skimmed over the surface, shaking slightly in her hand. For a few seconds there was nothing. And then splash. Something surfaced. It was fast, too fast to process, a shape dark and sleek, rising before vanishing again beneath the surface. The sound was deep, heavy, as if the lake exhaled. We all froze. The air grew thick, damp, charged. Then came a sound low, guttural, vibrating through the ground. It wasn't animal, it wasn't mechanical either, but something in between, rhythmic and pulsing. My chest ached with the vibration. Addison wanted to leave right then. Marcus told her it was just a beaver, maybe a moose. But his voice cracked, his eyes fixed on the still water. We moved our tents farther inland, building another fire deeper in the trees. For hours, none of us spoke much. Every gust of wind made us flinch. Around midnight, I woke up to the sound of splashing. Soft, rhythmic, like footsteps in shallow water. My heart thudded. I unzipped my tent and peered out. The moon was high, casting a silver glow across the lake, and there it was. Figure stood at the shoreline, 20 or 30 feet from the camp. At first, I thought it was Marcus. But the silhouette was too tall, too wrong. Its arms hung too long, bending in strange angles. The head was elongated, tilted, like it was listening. Water dripped from its body, glinting in the firelight. I couldn't breathe. It took one step forward. The sound wet, slow, deliberate. It stopped by the dying fire. The faint orange glow reflected off skin that wasn't quite skin dark, slick, almost scaled. Long, webbed fingers hung at its sides. Then it turned toward me. I felt its gaze, heavy, intelligent. It tilted its head the other way and let out that same guttural sound, louder this time. The ground seemed to tremble beneath it. I whispered Addison's name, saw her silhouette in the next tent, sitting up, frozen just like me. Then, silence swallowed everything. For what felt like an eternity, the figure didn't move. The night pressed in around us, the lake gleaming like black oil. Then, without warning, it turned and walked back toward the water. The movement was stiff, unnatural, like a puppet learning how to be human. When it reached the shore, it didn't wade in. It slid beneath the surface soundlessly. The ripples vanished almost instantly. I crawled from my tent and woke Marcus and Jenna. My voice trembled as I told them what we'd seen. Addison backed me up, eyes wide with terror. Marcus muttered something about stress and sleep deprivation. But Jenna was pale, shaking. She said she'd heard something circling the tents earlier, footsteps dragging just beyond the firelight. We sat by the embers until 3 a.m., flashlights trembling in our hands. Every crack in the woods sounded too close. Then something thudded near the shore, heavy, wet. The beam of my flashlight hit the water just in time to see bubbles rising in a wide circle, as if something massive was moving beneath. "Pack up," Marcus said quietly. His voice broke halfway through. We didn't argue. The forest swallowed our noise as we tore down camp, tossing gear into bags without folding or sorting. The air smelled metallic, like rain that never came. As I shoved my sleeping bag into the trunk, a faint hum drifted across the water, deep and resonant, like a generator buried underground. Addison froze. "Shh, it's under the lake," she whispered. Then came the splash. Huge, violent. A wave rolled up onto the shore, soaking our feet. Something dark rippled beneath the surface, massive and fast. We bolted for the car, adrenaline blinding us. The second Marcus turned the ignition, The headlights caught something on the shoreline, a flash of slick skin, eyes that glowed faintly yellow before vanishing into the trees. We didn't speak for the entire drive. The road back was hell, twisting, uneven, branches scraping the roof. Every few minutes I thought I saw something moving between the trees, keeping pace with us. The headlights flickered. Once the engine sputtered, and I swear I heard that low, vibrating hum again, as if the lake itself was following. When we reached the highway hours later, the relief was overwhelming. The gas station's fluorescent lights felt almost holy. None of us wanted to talk about it. Not that night, not the next morning, but I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd seen. That thing, the way it moved, the sound it made. A year later, I went back, not to the lake, but to the nearest town. I needed answers. Most locals just shrugged when I asked, or smirked like I was another city idiot chasing legends. But an old man at a bait shop stopped me as I turned to leave. His voice was raspy, careful. "You went to that lake, didn't you?" I nodded. He stared for a long time before speaking again. Used to be stories about it. Long before the roads. Said the water was bottomless. That something came up from below when people got too close. "What is it?" I asked. He shook his head. "Ain't something you name. You just stay away." That night, in my motel room, I dreamt of water. Endless. Black water with something shifting beneath it. I woke drenched in sweat, the faint echo of that guttural hum still in my ears. Sometimes I think about going back. Part of me needs to see it again, to understand. But every time I stand near a lake, any lake, I catch a faint vibration in the air. It's almost imperceptible, like a distant heartbeat. And I remember the eyes, the sound, the way it moved toward me. Whatever's in that lake is still there, waiting, watching. And if you ever find yourself camping somewhere so quiet you can hear your pulse in your ears, and the water suddenly ripples without wind, don't look too long, because maybe, just maybe, something's looking back. Would you dare return to that lake? The first thing I noticed was how the air felt wrong too still. It was too heavy, like the woods themselves were holding their breath. My name's Caleb, and what I'm about to tell you happened when I was 16. I've spent years trying to forget it, to convince myself it wasn't real. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear my own voice calling from the trees. That summer, my family decided to spend a long weekend in a remote cabin deep in the Appalachian Mountains. It was supposed to be peaceful, no phones, no neighbors, just forests stretching for miles in every direction. My dad always said the mountains were sacred, that they remembered things. Back then I thought he was just being poetic. I didn't realize how literal those words could be. The road to the cabin was little more than a scar in the dirt, twisting between walls of pine and fog. By the time we arrived, the sun was slipping behind the peaks, bleeding orange light through the tree line. The cabin looked small but solid weathered wood, a stone chimney, and a porch that creaked with every step. It smelled of sap and old smoke. Tyler, my little brother, ran straight to the deck shouting about the view while Mom unpacked groceries and Dad started the fire. Everything felt normal. That first night was quiet. Too quiet, maybe. I remember lying in bed and listening to the forest. No crickets, no owls. Just the faint hiss of wind through needles. It should have been calming, but instead it felt like the woods were listening back. I brushed it off. Told myself it was just mountain silence. By the second night, the forest had changed. A thin fog hung low to the ground, and even the air felt colder. Tyler convinced me we should sleep outside, said it would be more authentic. I didn't see the harm. We set up our tent 50 yards from the cabin, in a small clearing, surrounded by trees that leaned in close like eavesdroppers. Dad made sure we had flashlights, phones, and promised to keep an eye out from the porch. Then he and Mom disappeared inside, and their laughter faded beneath the hum of night. For hours, Tyler and I just talked about school, video games, how weird the stars looked up here, so close you could almost touch them. Eventually, exhaustion won, and we drifted off. When I woke up, it was silence real, suffocating silence, kind that presses against your ears until your own heartbeat feels too loud. I glanced at my phone, 2:07 a.m. Tyler was asleep beside me, face half buried in his sleeping bag. Then I heard my mother's voice. "Caleb," she called, distant but clear. "Sweetheart, come here." Her tone was sharp, trembling. I froze, staring at the ceiling of the tent. Tyler, I whispered, shaking him awake. Mom's calling, he groaned, half asleep. What? What's wrong? Before I could answer, she called again, but something in her voice had changed. The pitch was wrong. The rhythm off, like the words were being pushed through a throat that didn't quite know how to form them. I unzipped the tent just enough to peek out. The forest was blacker than ink. The cabin lights were off, no movement. Then, from the opposite direction, my father's voice echoed through the trees. "Sarah?" He shouted my mom's name. "Where are you?" Tyler sat up, wide-eyed. "That's Dad," he whispered. But they were both in the cabin. The two voices overlapped, Mom calling for us from one side, Dad calling for her from the other. Back and forth, closer each time, and just when I thought it couldn't get worse, I heard my own voice. "Tyler," it said softly, from somewhere to our left. "Come here." I felt every muscle in my body seize. My mouth was shut. I hadn't said a word. Tyler's eyes filled with tears as he shook his head. "That's you," he whimpered. "No," I breathed. "That's not me." Outside, the voices circled us, our family, multiplied and distorted. Each syllable seemed to drag through static, too slow, too perfect. Then came the footsteps, heavy, uneven, like something enormous was trying to pretend to walk like a man. I grabbed Tyler's wrist. "We're going to the cabin," I whispered. He didn't move. "It's out there," he said, trembling. "I know," I said. "Run when I say we waited." The voices fell silent for a moment. That was somehow worse than the sound. Then one sharp crack of a twig nearby. "Now," I hissed. We bolted, the tent flapped behind us, forgotten. Our flashlights cut through the dark but barely reached the ground ahead. The trees blurred past, branches snagging at our clothes as the forest came alive with voices ours, our parents echoing and twisting into something hateful. "Caleb," my mother's voice screamed, shrill and broken. "Come back." I didn't look back, until I heard something massive crash through the clearing behind us. I turned for a split second and saw it. A figure, tall and stretched too thin to be human, standing just at the edge of the light. 7, maybe 8 feet tall. Long arms, wrong angles, no eyes, no real face, just a mouth that moved like it was trying to find the right words. When it spoke, it used my voice. "Tyler," it said, "stop running." Then silence swallowed everything. The world narrowed to breath and heartbeat. Tyler's hand was slick in mine, both of us gasping as we stumbled through the final stretch toward the cabin. Every step felt heavier, as if the ground itself wanted to pull us down. I could still hear the mimic behind us seat's voice flickering between my mother's gentle tone and my father's desperate shouts, blending them until I couldn't tell which was real anymore. The porch light burst on as we neared. Dad flung open the door, eyes wide, pulling us inside and slamming it shut behind us. My chest burned from the sprint. Tyler collapsed beside me, sobbing. "What happened?" Dad demanded. I tried to explain about the voices, the footsteps, the thing. He stared like he wanted to believe me, but couldn't. Then a sound froze us all. "Daniel," a woman's voice called from outside. My mom's voice. But Mom was standing right there. She went pale, clutching Tyler tight. Dad moved to the window, hesitated, and peeked through the curtain. I'll never forget his face when he turned back white as ash, lips trembling. "Stay away from the windows," he whispered. He locked every door, every latch, turned off all the lights until the cabin sank into blackness. Outside, the forest began to breathe again, the wind rising, branches scraping against the roof. And then, the voices returned. First one, then two. Then all of us at once. They moved around the cabin, calling, whispering, laughing in tones that weren't quite human. Sometimes the voice outside would match perfectly. Mom asking me to open the door, Dad swearing it was safe. Then it would glitch, words stretched, syllables cracked, vowels twisted until they scraped like metal. Hours crawled by. I pressed against the wall, flashlight gripped tight, listening to my own voice whisper from just outside the window. Nonsense phrases mixed with my name. Like a child learning to speak. Tyler whimpered, "Make it stop." Dad sat in the center of the room, hunting knife in hand, staring at the front door as if his will alone could hold it shut. Above us came a new sound, slow, dragging footsteps across the roof. back and forth, then scratching. Mom's hands shook as she held Tyler. Her lips moved in silent prayer. Just stared at the ceiling, waiting for the boards to give way. Then everything stopped. No voices, no wind, no movement. The silence was so deep I could hear the clock ticking in the kitchen. I thought maybe, just maybe, it was over. That's when something tapped on the window. 3 times. Tap, tap, tap. I turned my flashlight toward the sound and froze. On the other side of the glass was a reflection of my own face, smiling. I made the mouth the words. "Let me in," I screamed. The flashlight slipped from my hand. Dad lunged forward, pulling me away just as the window shuddered under a heavy blow. Then came another, and another, until every wall echoed with pounding fists and distorted voices screaming in unison. We huddled together in the dark, waiting for the cabin to break apart. But it never did. Eventually, exhaustion won. My last memory before blacking out was the roof creaking above us, as if something heavy crouched there, waiting. Morning light broke through the curtains. The forest looked calm again, unreal in its stillness. Dad didn't say a word, just started packing. He left everything behind, even the tent. No one spoke during the drive. Mom kept glancing in the mirror. Tyler wouldn't let go of my hand. We never went back. We sold the camping gear. We stopped talking about the mountains. But sometimes, late at night, I'll wake up and hear something faint like my mom's voice calling from outside my window. And I always wonder, what if I answer? Would you dare return to those mountains? The first time I heard it, the night felt heavier than usual, like the air itself was holding its breath. My name's Wyatt, and 2 years ago, I was renting this small, outdated house on the edge of a forgotten town in rural Kentucky. It was the kind of place where crickets never stopped singing, and the moonlight always seemed just a bit too dim. I'd moved there for work at a local manufacturing plant. The rent was cheap, the area was quiet, and after years of city noise, that silence felt like a blessing. Or so I thought. The house was old, faded yellow paint, warped porch steps, and wood that complained with every shift of wind. Not scenic woods, but the kind that swallowed light. My nearest neighbor was half a mile away, a retired farmer who barely waved back when I passed his mailbox. It was lonely, sure, but I liked the isolation. No traffic, no arguments, no city sirens. It's just me and the quiet hum of the countryside. For weeks, life was simple. Work, dinner, TV, sleep. The usual sounds of an aging home didn't bother me. The groaning floors, the size of the foundation, the soft ticks and pops that came with cool nights. I'd grown up in old houses. I knew that kind of language. But around late October, the tone of that language changed. It started one night after a double shift. I came home close to midnight, exhausted, headlights cutting through the fog that rolled off the fields. When I stepped out of my truck, the world was utterly still. Then, faint but deliberate, I heard a scratching sound near the base of the house. Slow, rhythmic, like claws dragging across wood. I froze, my breath visible in the cold air. Probably a raccoon, I told myself. Or a possum. I circled the house, flashlight cutting through the dark, but saw nothing. The sound stopped the moment I got close. When I finally went inside and locked the door, the silence returned, thick and absolute. Still, I couldn't sleep. That sound. Like something had been testing the walls, feeling for a way in. The next night, it came again. 10 o'clock sharp, while I was watching TV, this time, from the living room window, right behind the couch. The scratching was louder, angrier. I muted the television and turned slowly. My flashlight beam trembled slightly as I pulled the curtain back. At first, all I saw was darkness. Then movement, a crouched shape pressed against the siding. My heart slammed against my ribs. I tapped the glass, hoping to scare it off. And then it looked up at me. It wasn't an animal. Its face was human-like, but all wrong, stretched to thin. Skin pale as candle wax. Eyes hollow and black like sockets without depth. The mouth hung open, teeth yellowed and jagged. Its limbs were long, unnaturally so, bent at sharp angles. And those fingers, impossibly long, bony, tipped with what looked like blackened nails. We stared at each other. I don't know how long, maybe seconds, maybe years. Then that thing smiled. A grotesque, wide, unnatural smile that made its cheeks split and stretch. I stumbled backward, tripping over the coffee table. When I looked again, it was gone. The next morning, I went outside to where I'd seen it crouching. The soil was damp, and there were marks in the mud, long, narrow streaks, as though something had dragged its fingers through it. The siding bore fresh gouges, deep and deliberate. I spent hours online that day, trying to find an explanation. The rake, the crawler, different names, same idea, a pale humanoid that moved on all fours, haunting remote places. That night, I locked everything, doors, windows, even shoved furniture against them. Around midnight, the sound came again. Not at the window this time. Above me, slow, deliberate scraping, pacing along the roofline. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I grabbed a baseball bat and stood in the living room, eyes fixed on the ceiling. The sound went on for what felt like forever, then stopped. Then silence swallowed everything. Stood there frozen, gripping the bat like it could actually help me. The quiet pressed in on me from every direction. Then came another sound, claws dragging down the siding. It was climbing down. I crept to the window, barely parting the curtain. It was there again, halfway down the wall, limbs twisted, clinging to the wood like a spider. Its head turned slowly toward me, and those hollow eyes locked onto mine. This time, no smile. Just a dead stare, cold, knowing. Then, in one smooth motion, it dropped, landing silently on all fours, and vanished into the tree line. That was the night I left. I grabbed my keys, phone, and wallet, and didn't look back. I stayed at a friend's house for 3 nights, jumping at every creak. I finally told him what happened. He laughed at first until he realized I wasn't joking. "You should call the cops," he said. But what could I say? There's something crawling on my roof at night. They'd think I'd lost it. Eventually I had to go back. Couldn't afford to stay away forever. The house looked normal when I returned, still calm, like nothing had ever happened. I walked through every room, checking every lock, and for a few nights, things stayed quiet. A week passed, then 2. I started convincing myself I'd imagined it all. Stress, exhaustion, maybe I'd hallucinated from lack of sleep. Then one night I woke up to a sound that froze me in place. Breathing. It came from right outside my bedroom window. Slow, raspy, labored. Inhale, exhale. I sat up, pulse hammering in my throat. I didn't move, didn't even breathe. Then came a new sound, a soft, wet clicking like bones rubbing together. My flashlight was on the nightstand. My hand shook as I grabbed it and aimed at the curtain. A tall shadow loomed just beyond the glass, taller than before. It meant it was standing upright now. Scratching started again, this time on the window itself. Then I saw them, long, thin fingers sliding into view, pressing against the curtain, trying to pull it aside. My voice broke as I yelled for it to go away, but it didn't flinch. The fingers froze mid-motion, then slowly withdrew. I didn't sleep, couldn't. I waited until dawn before daring to check. The window was covered in new scratches, this time on the glass. Deep grooves where those nails had dragged down. I moved out 2 months later. The landlord thought I'd lost my mind when I broke the lease. Maybe I had. But I couldn't take it anymore. The constant watching, the sleepless nights, the feeling that something was just outside waiting for me to turn off the lights. I live in a small city now. Apartment complex, bright streetlights, neighbors I can hear through the walls, and I like it that way. I tell myself that whatever was out there, it stayed in those woods. But some nights when the wind scrapes against my windows just right, I swear I hear that rhythm again. That slow, deliberate scratching. I still see it when I close my eyes. The pale skin, the hollow eyes, that twisted smile stretching too far. Maybe it wasn't just curious. Maybe it wanted more. So if you ever find yourself living out in the middle of nowhere, and you hear scratching on your walls or roof, don't ignore it. Don't assume it's an animal. Because once it sees you, once it knows you're there, it doesn't stop. It waits, watches, learns. And when you finally start to feel safe again, that's when it comes back. Would you dare return to that house? The air that morning tasted of rain and rust, the kind that sticks to your tongue and reminds you you're far from home. My uncle's old truck groaned as we rolled down the narrow dirt road toward the farmhouse. I remember thinking how quiet it was out there. No birds, no wind, just that endless Pennsylvania silence pressing against the glass. My uncle, as usual, was rambling about profit margins and antique fixtures. I nodded, pretending to listen, though something in me already felt uneasy. Maybe it was the way the trees leaned toward the road, their branches like arms reaching out. The farmhouse came into view like something forgotten by time, paint peeling off in curled sheets, roof sagging in the middle, windows blind and lifeless. It didn't look abandoned, it looked drained. As we stepped out, the air grew thick, like the world was holding its breath. My uncle was all business, pacing around, talking about good bones. I followed behind, my boots sinking into the soft, wet earth, every step pulling me down just a little more than it should. Inside, the smell hit first. Mold, rot, old paper, something faintly metallic. It was the kind of smell that sticks to your skin. The rooms were frozen in time, as if the owners had just walked out decades ago. Stacks of yellowed newspapers, broken plates on the counter, a single shoe sitting by the door. I tried to joke that maybe the owners had vanished mid-step, but my uncle didn't laugh. He just said, "Focus on the work," and handed me gloves. For 3 days, we gutted the place. Sunlight fought its way through cracks in the boards, dust drifting in those weak golden beams like ash. Sometimes, while I worked, I thought I heard faint noises from below, soft creaks, a dragging sound, like something moving under the floorboards. But whenever I stopped to listen, it went quiet. I told myself it was rats. It was always rats in these old houses. By the 3rd day, we'd cleared most of the first floor. My uncle was in good spirits, humming off-key while he repaired a door frame. That's when he said, "Check the basement, see if the foundation's stable." I froze mid-step. There was something about the word basement that made the air feel colder. He handed me a heavy flashlight and a notepad. I didn't want to go, but pride kept me from saying no. The door creaked like it hadn't been opened in years. A smell of damp earth and rusted metal spilled out. First step groaned under my weight. The light barely cut through the thick darkness below. As I descended, the temperature dropped sharply, my breath visible in the beam of the flashlight. The basement was raw, dirt floor, stone walls slick with moisture. The air was heavy, as if the space itself didn't want me there. I moved slowly, jotting down notes on cracks and water stains, trying not to think about the shadows that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking. Then I heard a faint, dragging sound. It's like fabric against dirt. My hand tightened on the flashlight. I turned, shining the beam across the room. Nothing, just the rough stone walls and a few broken jars. I let out a nervous laugh, the sound thin and hollow in that space. "Just rats," I muttered to no one. But then, footsteps. Slow, measured, coming from the far corner. "Uncle," I called out. No answer. The sound stopped, leaving behind only my heartbeat echoing in my ears. The silence was alive, pressing in from every side. I turned toward the stairs, and that's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was a shadow, tall, slender, wavering in the dim light. But then it moved. 7 feet, maybe more. Its limbs were too long, too thin, and its fingers, God, those fingers twitched like broken wires. My light found its face, and I wish it hadn't. There wasn't one, just smooth, featureless skin stretched tight where eyes, nose, and mouth should have been. My breath hitched. The flashlight trembled in my hand. I couldn't move. I couldn't even blink. It just stood there, head tilted slightly as if studying me. I swear I felt its gaze, even though there were no eyes. Then it took a step forward. The sound it made wasn't like a footstep. It was a wet, dull thud, like something heavy dropped onto soil. The air seemed to close around me. My throat locked up. When it moved again, faster this time, my body finally remembered how to scream. Then, silence swallowed everything. The scream tore out of me before I even realized it. I spun and bolted toward the stairs, the beam of my flashlight jerking wildly across the walls. Behind me, I heard that awful scraping sound, those feet dragging, gaining speed. The air felt thicker, colder, every breath a knife in my chest. I took the stairs 2 at a time, my boots slamming against the rotted wood. Something thudded behind me, closer, faster. I didn't dare look back. The door at the top was only a few steps away when I heard it exhale, a wet, rasping sound that didn't belong to anything human. I hit the door with my shoulder and stumbled into the kitchen, slamming it shut behind me. The lock clicked just as something heavy struck the other side. The door shuddered once, twice, then went still. My uncle came running, shouting my name. I turned toward him, my face cold, my voice barely working. "There's someone down there." He looked skeptical, even annoyed. "Probably an animal," he said. But when he saw my hands shaking, his expression faltered. "Stay here," he muttered, grabbing the flashlight. I wanted to stop him, to grab his arm and tell him not to go. I didn't. Maybe part of me needed to know I wasn't crazy. The moment the basement door opened again, that smelled damp and metallic seeped out like a breath. He disappeared into the dark, and I stood there, counting seconds, each one stretching longer than the last. 15 minutes. That's how long he was gone. When he finally came back up, his face was pale and slick with sweat. He didn't speak, just locked the door and poured himself a glass of water with shaking hands. When I asked what he saw, he said, "Nothing," but his voice cracked on the word. His eyes told a different story, the kind that doesn't need words. We left without another word. On the drive home, the silence was suffocating. I could see his knuckles white on the steering wheel, his gaze fixed dead ahead. When he dropped me off, he gave me an envelope with cash and said, "You don't have to come back." He never finished the farmhouse, sold it a few months later, untouched. No repairs, no explanations. It's just gone. But I couldn't let it go. The nights after that, I'd dream of the basement, the smell, the sound of those dragging feet, the smooth, eyeless face turning toward me. I'd wake up gasping, the image burned into my mind. Once I even thought I heard it, that same slow thud coming from beneath my apartment floor. I tried researching the property, found only fragments, missing persons, unexplained disappearances, whispers about the land being cursed. Some said the farmhouse was built over something old, older than the town itself. A burial site, maybe, or something worse. Others claimed the land feeds on people who disturb it. I stopped reading when one forum post mentioned the basement dirt floor and how something moved beneath it. Sometimes I wonder what my uncle saw down there. Maybe it didn't show itself fully. Maybe it just whispered to him. Whatever it was, he never spoke about it again. Stopped flipping houses after that. Moved states. Wouldn't even drive through rural areas anymore. As for me, I can't go near basements. Even now, years later, if I have to grab something from my own storage, I leave the light on and never close the door behind me, because sometimes, in the quiet, I can almost hear it. The faint scrape of dirt, the sound of long fingers twitching in the dark. And when that happens, I look toward the shadows and tell myself it's just my imagination. But deep down, I know better, because some things never stay buried. Would you dare return to that farmhouse? The first thing I noticed that night was how alive the desert felt. The air pressed against the glass of my windshield like something breathing hot, heavy and humming with invisible energy. I had always loved the idea of solitude, but out there, miles from anything. That solitude began to feel like something watching me. My name is Natalie, and 3 years ago, what started as a simple solo road trip through the Arizona desert became the night I stopped believing the desert was empty. Graduation had left me restless. Everyone else had plans, jobs, apartments, relationships. I just wanted quiet. Space to think before real life began. The desert seemed perfect for that. I'd read about its stillness, how the stars looked endless when no city lights touched them. I thought being truly alone under that sky would be freeing. So I packed my car with camping gear, a map, and the illusion that I was in control. By sunset, found my spot, a flat patch of earth about a mile off Highway 10. The dirt road leading there looked like no one had driven it in years. Sky burned orange, then faded to bruised purple. The air cooled, carrying the scent of dust and sagebrush. As I stood outside my car, Silence stretched out in every direction. No engines, no voices, not even the chirp of crickets. Just the faint hiss of wind moving through the sand. I built a small fire, ate canned soup, and watched the stars appear, first a few, then hundreds, then thousands. The Milky Way shimmered like a river of glass. I remember whispering, "This is perfect," as if saying it would make it stay that way. I didn't know perfection in the desert always comes before something terrible. By 10 p.m., I crawled into my tent. The fire had dimmed to glowing embers, and the desert had gone utterly still. I drifted toward sleep, lulled by the faint rustle of the wind. Then something shifted. A sound, or maybe just an instinct, snapped me awake. My heart hammered against my ribs. The darkness inside the tent felt thicker, heavier than before. I reached for my phone. 2:13 a.m. I lay there listening. At first, it was only the whisper of the wind again. Then came a smell. Subtle at first, faint, sour, but within seconds, it grew unbearable. Rotting meat mixed with something sharp and chemical, like burnt plastic. I covered my nose, gagging quietly, trying to figure out what could smell like that in the middle of nowhere. And then came the footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunching across the sand just outside the tent. My first thought was an animal, a coyote maybe, or a stray dog. But these steps were too heavy, too even. They circled the tent once, then again, steady and measured. As if whoever or whatever it was knew I was awake. My chest tightened. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The air grew thicker with the stench. Then came the breathing, ragged, human but not, the kind of breath that sounds forced, like lungs struggling to remember how to work. It moved closer until it stopped right at the zipper of my tent. The faint light of the moon bled through the fabric, outlining a tall shadow. The shape was wrong, too thin, too angular. I didn't dare speak. Every instinct screamed that sound would be a mistake. Then the tent wall bowed inward, the fabric stretching as something pressed a hand or claw against it. I scrambled backward, clutching my flashlight, heart racing so fast it hurt. The pressure vanished. The shadow drifted sideways. Then came the scratching, long, deliberate testing strokes along the tent wall. It wasn't random, it was curious. I flicked on my flashlight and aimed it toward the sound. The beam lit up the thin fabric, and there, just inches from me, moved the silhouette of fingers, possibly long and twitching slowly, like they were feeling the light itself. That was it. I had to run. I unzipped my sleeping bag, grabbed my keys, and took one last shaky breath. The sound of the zipper seemed deafening as I slowly opened the tent flap. The desert outside was pitch black. My flashlight beam wobbled across sand and brush until it caught on something standing about 20 feet away. It was tall. Too tall. Its skin looked leathery, stretched tight over bones that bent wrong. Its head tilted as if studying me. The eye, sunken, reflective, flashed silver in my light. And then it smiled. The grin revealed jagged teeth, uneven and glistening, and it exhaled that rotting chemical smell again. The sound it made next, half scream, half growl, vibrated through my chest like static. I didn't think, I just ran. The sand shifted under my boots as I sprinted for the car, light bouncing wildly across the desert. Behind me, the footsteps followed fast, relentless. It grew louder, closer. I dropped my keys, cursed under my breath, and dove for them. When I looked up, it was only 10 feet away. Then, silence swallowed everything. The air felt like it froze. No wind, no sound, just the quiet hum of panic filling my skull. My hand shook as I jammed the key into the car door, missing the lock twice before it clicked. I threw myself inside, slammed the door, and twisted the key. The engine roared to life, and that's when I saw it. Standing in the headlights, its body shimmered with movement, as if the skin wasn't solid but shifting. Patches of dark-scaled flesh caught the light. Its limbs hung too long, and its knees bent the wrong way. But the eyes, those eyes were bottomless pits that didn't reflect light. They absorbed it. I froze, breath fogging the glass, as it tilted its head, watching me with what felt like amusement. Then it moved, fast. It slammed its hands, no claws, onto the hood, the metal dented with a sharp crack. I screamed, threw the car into reverse, and floored it. Gravel sprayed behind me. The headlights cut across the creature's body just long enough for me to see the scars patterns burned into its skin like brands. It staggered back, then lunged again, its mouth wide, that sound ripping through the night like tearing metal. I spun the car around and hit the gas. The headlights caught it in the distance one last time, running after me on all fours now, impossibly fast. My tires bounced off rocks, the steering wheel jerking in my grip, but I didn't stop. Couldn't I only looked back once and it was gone? For a second I thought I'd imagined everything. But then, as the dirt road met the highway, my headlights illuminated a smear of something dark across the road ahead. Not blood, something thicker, black with a metallic sheen, glistening under the lights. I drove around it, refusing to look closer. The desert swallowed the creature behind me, but its sound, its scream, still echoed in my head all the way to the nearest gas station. I parked under the flickering light, hands trembling, and stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My face was pale, streaked with dirt and tears. But in the mirror behind my shoulder, for just a split second, I swore I saw something move in the shadows beyond the pump lights. By morning, the world looked normal again. The sun burned away the night like it had never happened. But something in me stayed broken. I couldn't bring myself to go back for my gear. I just kept driving toward Phoenix, pretending the desert hadn't changed shape around me. Weeks later, I posted what happened on an online forum for unexplained encounters. I expected mockery. Instead, I got confirmation. People described the same smell, the same sounds. Some said it was a thing that hunts sound, something ancient tied to certain desert places where the wind never blows. Others said it was part of the land itself, something that woke when humans stayed too long. Maybe they were right. I tried to move on. I told myself it was stress, exhaustion, or heat. But sometimes, late at night, when the air gets too still, I smell it again, that same faint rot seeping through my window like a memory that refuses to die. I'll glance outside and swear I see movement at the edge of the streetlights. Something tall? Watching? Last month I saw a new post online. A couple camping near Tucson disappeared without a trace. Their car was found on a dirt road, doors locked, engine still idling. No footprints, no struggle. Just that smell lingering in the air. I don't know if what I saw was real in the way people mean when they say real. But I know it wasn't human. I know it's still out there, somewhere in that endless desert. So, if you ever camp alone under those stars and wake to that smell, don't look, don't listen, just run. Because some things in the desert aren't sleeping, they're waiting. Don't you dare return to this place. The forest had always felt like a place to breathe again. But that morning, the air carried something heavy, something wrong. I remember the chill of Oregon mist, clinging to my jacket, the smell of damp earth pressing into my lungs. I wasn't running from the trail that day, I was running from myself. The breakup, the sleepless nights, the hollow silence of my apartment. I just needed noise that wasn't my thoughts. So, I picked a trail I knew well, familiar, safe. The path was empty. The parking lot, a stretch of wet asphalt, reflecting the gray sky. Not another car in sight. Perfect. My boots crunched against the dirt, and the forest swallowed me whole. The sounds of the city were gone, replaced by the whisper of wind through moss and the distant gurgle of a stream. I told myself this was what peace sounded like. But beneath that peace, there was a stillness that didn't feel right. For the first 2 hours, it was normal. I took pictures, hummed a tune, and pretended I was fine. Then I stopped beside a narrow creek, its water sliding between rocks like glass. I sat down to eat, and for a moment, the world felt still. Too still. No birds, no rustle of leaves. Just silence, pressing against my ears like a held breath. That's when I heard it, a faint movement behind me, the soft drag of something through the brush. When I turned, I saw a figure tall, unmoving, about 30 yards away. It stood half hidden behind a tree, as if caught mid-step. At first I thought it was another hiker, but it didn't move, didn't wave, didn't blink. It was watching me. My stomach dropped, but I called out anyway, my voice cracking through the stillness. "Hey, you okay?" "Nothing, just stillness." Then a slow, unnatural tilt of its head, like a puppet being tested for motion. Something in me screamed to leave. I packed my bag fast and got back on the trail, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone anymore. I turned once, and it was closer. Still far, but closer. My heart slammed against my ribs. Skin looked gray against the forest shadows, its arms too long, its shape. Wrong. I started walking faster. I didn't hear footsteps, but every time I looked back, it had moved again, always keeping the same distance, like it was mimicking my pace. I broke into a jog, then a run. The forest blurred, my lungs burned, and the path felt endless. But that sound, that quiet, rhythmic thud behind me, matched mine perfectly. Not chasing, just following, always behind. When I finally saw the parking lot through the trees, it felt like sunlight breaking through a nightmare. I sprinted to my car, slammed the door, and looked back. It was standing at the edge of the forest, tall and motionless, a pale figure half swallowed by the mist. I couldn't see its face, but I felt it, that fixed, empty stare drilling into me even as I sped away. That night, I woke to the sound of scratching. My window, second floor. Impossible. I froze. The sound stopped, then came again, slow, deliberate, like fingers tracing the glass. I pulled back the curtain. It was standing in the parking lot below, beneath the flickering streetlight. Same height, same gray skin, still featureless. It tilted its head again, and even though I couldn't see its eyes, I felt them on me, studying me, my body locked in place. Then silence swallowed everything. Part to the watcher that followed home escalation, approximately 750 words the next morning, I convinced myself it was exhaustion. Maybe I'd imagined it, my brain fried from stress and caffeine. But that night, it came back. Same spot, same motionless stance, always looking up at my window. And every night after that, there it was. I started recording it, desperate to prove it was real. My phone showed nothing, an empty lot, no figure, no shadow. But I could see it, clear as day, standing there, patient and still. My friends laughed it off, told me to rest, to talk to someone. But how do you explain something that doesn't exist for anyone else? The nights blurred together. Sleep vanished. I started leaving the lights on, curtains drawn, trying not to look. But I always did. Curiosity gnawed at me until I'd peek through the blinds, and there it was, waiting. Sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours. Always watching, never closer. Never gone for long. After 2 weeks, it began to move. I'd see it while driving, a tall, pale figure standing by the roadside. Once, I saw it reflected in a store window behind me. When I turned around, it was gone. My heart would pound until my vision tunneled, and I'd tell myself I was imagining things. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. I called a priest. He blessed the apartment, sprinkled holy water on every door. That night, I woke up, and it was outside again. Same place, same posture. Unchanged. The priest's words hadn't mattered. I spoke to a paranormal investigator who told me it might be a tulpa, a creature fed by fear, drawn to belief. Don't acknowledge it, she said. Don't look at it. Don't think about it. I tried. God, I tried. But how do you ignore something that never blinks? I moved to a new apartment across the city, packed everything, and drove through the night. I told myself this was the end, that I'd left it behind. But the first night, when I pulled back my new curtains, it was there. Closer than before, standing beneath the streetlight across the road, its body slightly angled, like it had followed the sound of my breathing. That was when something changed. It started tilting its head the other way, mirroring my movements. Every time I leaned forward, it leaned too. Every pause, every motion, it mimicked. A silent game that only I was playing. I stopped leaving my apartment. My friends stopped calling. I sealed the windows, taped the gaps under the doors, and told myself I could wait it out. The dread didn't fade. It thickened. Some nights I'd hear faint tapping on the walls, or footsteps moving just outside the door. And then, sometimes, whispers. So faint I couldn't tell if they were real. Joshua, it said my name once, just once, and I knew it wasn't outside anymore. Now it's different. I don't see it in the parking lot as much. But I feel it in the corner of my vision, in the reflections on the TV, behind the shower curtain when the water runs too loud. Sometimes I wake to find handprints on the inside of the window glass, long and thin, as if someone pressed their fingers there from within. I don't know what it wants. It never attacks, never speaks again. It just watches, inching closer, every time I let my guard down. And when I try to sleep, I feel its breath slow and patient behind me. People say we create the monsters we fear most. But what if fear isn't the creation? What if it's the invitation? I'm writing this now because I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending it isn't real. If you're re-listening, if you've ever felt watched when you were alone, maybe it has already chosen you too. Maybe that's how it spreads. And if you ever find yourself on that Oregon Trail and you see something standing between the trees, don't stop. Don't look back. Just keep walking. Because once it knows your name, it will follow you home. Would you dare return to that forest? Before you go, the story doesn't end here. Shadows you've heard tonight are only a glimpse of what truly hides out there. If you think this tale was unsettling, wait until you witness what roams the ancient mountains when the sun disappears. Go watch *7 True Appalachian Feral People Horror Stories. It's a journey deep into America's most cursed wilderness, where centuries of isolation have twisted man into something unrecognizable. That video is waiting for you on the end screen. But be warned, once you start, you might never sleep the same again. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to Scary Dark Narrations for more real horror stories that dig beneath the surface of reality. Hit that bell icon, because every night will bring you closer to the darkness that's been waiting for you all along. Until next time, keep your lights dim, your doors locked, and remember, the scariest stories are always the ones that are true.